I want to begin this morning by offering an apology. It has been rightly noted that on Mother's Day we have a tendency, and rightfully so, to heap praise upon our mothers, but on Father's Day we tend to beat them with a 2x4. I've been guilty of that. I've tried to explore some of the reasons why that may be. I've talked with Brooke about a number of them. But, I would love to tell myself that it's some kind of a righteous thing, a righteous answer, that I'm just trying to think through some of the things for myself. And truth be told with you, I don't know exactly why I've done that, but I know that I have done it. And that is my fault, and I'm sorry. I'm not saying that it is wrong for us to be critical and to think and encourage ourselves to be better as dads. I just think that days meant to celebrate fathers should do just that, and that is to celebrate them. And so this morning, that's what I want us to do. I want us to, just a simple phrase that we've probably said many times to our own dads, and that is, thanks, Dad. Looking at God in the Sermon on the Mount, because one of the recurring refrains in the Sermon on the Mount is, your Father who is in heaven, or your Father knows that you need this, your Father, continuously. And so what I want us to do this morning is just two simple things. First of all, I want us to deal with some of the perceptions that exist around fatherhood, and then I want us to look at the example of God the Father and what it means to practice fatherhood. And so to do that, I want us to read Matthew 6, beginning in verse 8. Jesus is in the context actually describing for them people who have been using prayer for inappropriate purposes. He describes the way that we should pray, and thus he says in verse 8, "Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. Pray then like this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." So let's begin, first of all, perceptions of fatherhood. You have what I consider to be a modern portrayal. That is, if you were to look at movies, you were to watch sitcoms, you were to watch, shows on whatever streaming, and even, unfortunately, with the way sometimes fathers are treated, they are presented as mindless, clueless, and almost like a babbling buffoon. It's like Cosby said in his old stand-up routine, and I understand Bill Cosby is taboo, I get that. But his comedic routine, he pretty much hit the nail on the head. He said the dad is usually the one walking around looking like this, all confused, and he only wants to know one thing: where is your mother? That's the way that especially in a more modern sense, that's the way that men or fathers are portrayed. That their wives and their children kind of keep them in the dark, and they're kind of the buffoon, and that they kind of situate him and move him around the way that they need him to go. Now, does that happen? Sure it does. Sure it does. But I don't think it's the majority of the men I know who are fathers. A father may not know every single thing that his wife may know in the home. But if we're going to be fair, he knows a lot of things that she does not know. And I don't know that we should allow ourselves to go to war because all of this area has to be covered. And just because this is the area that I cover doesn't make it superior to the area you cover, or the area that you cover superior to the area that I cover. It's all got to be covered. And there is more knowledge in men, and we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. But the Bible calls us as men not only to live with knowledge live with our wives according to knowledge, but also when we're training up our children, it involves and implies a sense of knowledge. And that it's not just some mindless thing that he never thinks about his family and that he is never concerned about those types of things, and he's just kind of wandering through life and, kind of being led around by the nose. One of the things that we hopefully will come to learn in just a moment is that men have a lot more going on in their minds than you will ever know, and more than they will ever admit. So there's kind of that modern betrayal that says he's just this kind of clueless, lovable type figure. But then you've got this more older portrayal, and of course we could chart this and go back and look for examples of it, but basically that dad is an old jerk and a tyrant. That he doesn't listen to anybody, he doesn't really care how you feel, he just simply mows over everybody, and that's just simply the way it is. He rules with an iron fist, you don't have a right to question him, and he's not really concerned with your feelings. Again, are there fathers who are like that? Yes. Would it be fair to say that's how most fathers are? Absolutely not. It would be totally and completely unfair. Because fathers who are serious about the fact that they are fathers. And it doesn't mean that they're out talking about it. It doesn't mean that they're out saying all these things and doing all these things and drawing attention to what they're doing. But they are much more contemplative. And they take it in a very serious way, the responsibilities that God has placed upon their shoulders. Of what it means to lead his home, Ephesians 5:23-27. That there is a great responsibility there. That says you love your wife as Christ loved the church. Do you understand the depth of that statement? Do you understand the responsibility in that statement? A great deal of fathers and husbands and leaders that I know understand the weight of that, and they feel that weight on their shoulders every day when they wake up and every night when they go to bed. So the old tyrant thing, and even if dad is not willing to admit it all the times, which, by the way, all of us go through moments where we don't want to admit our mistakes, dad knows he's making mistakes, and he's trying. He's trying. And maybe sometimes we should be a little more gracious. Maybe as gracious to others about their mistakes as we are about our own. But really the truth of the matter is that most fathers, most husbands, they struggle with all kinds of things, but they don't feel like they can unload them on their family. There are burdens that they feel that they are carrying that it's not, I don't want my wife to have to worry about this. I don't want my kids to have to worry about this. Now, usually, that's the closest circle within them. So, who do they go to when they have these issues that weigh upon them? Many times, it's just themselves, and they continue to carry the weight on their own shoulders. And it's not because they're trying to withhold anything. It's not because they're trying to be secretive. They're simply trying to let their family that they love enjoy life so that and let them worry about a great deal of these stresses. That's the truth of the matter. And like it or not, look, men are not complicated. They're not. Men, honestly, in a certain way, they never really grow up. And this is what most men don't know how to say. And I'm not knocking men for not knowing how to say it, but many times we're not even aware of what it is. But the truth of the matter is, whether it's with his wife or with his children, he wants to be their hero. That's it. He wants to be like Proverbs 17:6, where the glory of his children is their father. They love their dad. They want to be loved deeply. And they take it seriously. But again, we go back and we discuss this, what's going on in the mind of a man. Dr. Brené Brown is a leading researcher, clinical psychologist. She became famous many years ago because of TED Talks, several TED Talks that she had given. But in a portion of her research career, she spent some time researching shame, the ins and outs of shame, how it works, how we process it, all of those things. But in the early parts of her research, for the first few years of her research, she only interviewed women. Now, she's going to tell a story where all of this changes, and she began to think more broadly about it. She says this, "For men, shame is not a bunch of competing and conflicting expectations. It's one thing. Don't be perceived as weak." People say, "That's not true." Let me tell you something. It is true. I did not interview men for the first 4 years of my study. It wasn't until a man said to me, "I love what you have to say about shame, but I'm curious why you don't mention men." And I said, "I don't study men." And he said, "Well, that's convenient." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you say, reach out, tell our story, be vulnerable. But do you see those books you just signed for my wife and daughters?" He said, "They would rather me die on top of my white horse than watch me fall down." When we reach out and are vulnerable, we get the life beat out of us, and I cleaned that up a little bit. And don't tell me it's from the guys and the coaches and the dads, because the women in my life are harder on me than anyone else. Now, I'm not saying that describes every working relationship. That was one man telling his story. But I want you to think about this. Have you ever been in a situation where Dad, he's not really saying a lot, he's being quiet, and normally he'll cut up and do some things, and he's not. And then someone says, "I don't really like this. You're just not acting like yourself." You know what you're telling him? The reason he's quiet is because he's got a lot on his shoulders. And what you're telling him is, you need to get it together. We can't handle you like this. Now let me ask you something. When somebody is feeling the weight of the world on their shoulders and in need, is that really what they need to hear? Sometimes Dad needs an opportunity to be human. And we don't always want to give that opportunity. So, with that in mind, those perceptions that exist around fathers, that exist around men, that they're clueless, mindless buffoons who most people would say they only have one thing on their mind, and that's they've clearly never truly met a man or known one if they think that of them. I want us to think about what God does for us and how, if you think through it, most fathers that you know are actually doing things that greatly reflect God. First of all, when we thank our dads, we should thank them for knowing us. In this text in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 8, Jesus is telling them not to utter on empty, mindless prayers as Gentiles would do to try and manipulate their gods. He says, don't be like them because your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. God knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows exactly what we need. He knows when we need it. But you know what? Dads have the ability to see their children for who they are. You know, sometimes, especially in American culture, dads can get a bad rap that says, they're not really connected and tuned into their kids. They don't really know who they are. Actually, they got a pretty stinking good view of it. They know who their kids are. And what I mean is, there's not this tendency in them to look at certain things and go, oh, that's my baby, they're so cute. They can actually look at them sometimes and say, that's not cute, that's a problem. And that doesn't make them mean, and it doesn't make them a jerk. It means they're thinking long-range picture. We've got to help our child develop in the areas that they need to be developed. And if you ask any parent, I would dare say, if you interviewed any parent, mine included, and you were to ask them, what are your child's strengths and weaknesses? No matter how many children you have, I guarantee you, no parent would struggle to tell you what those were. You go down, you list each child, you would say, look, he or she, they were really good at this. They have a really tender heart, or they're really keen on certain things, and they're really good at certain things. But then there are also areas where this gets the best of them, and it's just not their strongest point. And there are areas they're going to have to learn and work on. That comes from knowing your kids. And it's not about harping on them. It's just about helping them to be better. And we need to thank our dads for doing that. Not that our moms don't, but today is Father's Day. So thanks for knowing us. Number 2, thanks for being approachable. And you know, if you think about it, in a lot of movies and a lot of scenarios, dad is still kind of this iron figure that is impenetrable. You don't go to him. You don't talk to him about these things. You talk to mom. But don't you find it interesting when when God reveals himself to us, Jesus says, I want you to pray like this, our Father in heaven. He seems to imply that God is approachable. God, who has the highest standards, who is perfect in every way, is approachable. And when it comes to dads, deep down, even though they certainly, a lot of dads do not get the credit in this area that they deserve, deep down, they know when they're in over their heads, all it takes is one call. That's it. One call, one visit, and everything stops. And everything moves into action. It doesn't matter what needs to be done. It doesn't matter how much it costs. It doesn't matter any of those things. Nothing matters. We drop it and we move for our kids. And that's something that we should love and respect about our dads. And even when they're giving us advice, which is many times why a lot of times we go to mom more than dad, is because mom is better at listening usually, and dad is more programmed to fix things. Listen, even when your dad is trying to tell you, talking to him about a problem, he's trying to tell you how to fix things, stop getting mad at him for the way he's wired. You brought him a problem, and the one thing he wants for you as your dad is for you to be okay. And if he can fix that, he will. That's what he wants to do. And so learning to have compassion and learning to see, instead of being annoyed by certain things, start to realize that that's actually my dad telling me he loves me. He loves me. If he didn't care about me, he wouldn't be concerned with my problems. He wouldn't be trying to help me fix them. Number 3, thank you for providing for us. This is a hallmark characteristic of God. In this text, Matthew 6 and verse 11, give us this day our daily bread. Throughout, and later on in chapter 6, he will talk about in verses 26 and 30, that God provides. He so clothes and feeds. Matthew chapter 7, ask, it's given, seek, and you'll find, knock, and it'll be open. He said, what father among you, if his son asked him for bread, would give him a stone? Or if he asked for a fish, would give him a serpent? If you who are evil, you're sinful, you don't get it right, you're not perfect, if you know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more does your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? God provides for us in an abundance that if we were to sit down and try and name them, we would die before we could end it. Look, and I get it. As dads, we can have this tendency. We can look around. We can see what other kids are doing. We can see what other kids have. We can see all these things. And there is this thing in us that says, I want my kids to have those things. I don't want them to want for these things. There is something that is in us. Whether you respond to it all the time, you know it's there. And is it fair to say that sometimes we overwork and sometimes we take things too seriously and sometimes we get things out of proportion? Yes, that's fair. But what we need to understand is He's not trying to get it wrong. He's fighting his guts out because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And it is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to provide for the people that God has entrusted to your care. And when he gets up, when his alarm clock goes off at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he gets up and he goes to work, and he's making a little too much noise, and maybe people are disturbed. Maybe kids wake up. Maybe this, that, and the other. The distinct memory I have, the way I woke up every morning when I was in high school, my bedroom was off of the kitchen. My dad, he would make his lunch, and he would take the ice tray that had been filled up in the night, and he would pour it into his cooler, and it sounded like something was coming through the wall. But you know, the way I hear that now at 38 is a whole lot different than I heard it when I was 15. When he was working 3 jobs and getting ready to go out in the heat for the day. My dad told me he loved me and still does tell me that. But you know, even if he had never told me, I would have known it. No man puts himself through what he put himself through to take care of us if he doesn't love us. And so yes, maybe when his alarm goes off early in the morning, he hits snooze one too many times for you. Maybe sometimes he just wants to lay in the bed with you a little bit longer before he has to get up and start it all over again. But don't misunderstand it. He's not doing it for himself. He's doing it for everybody around him. Number 4, forgiving. In this text, forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. God is a God who delights in forgiveness. He loves to forgive people. And when it comes to our parents, look, our parents may get mad at us. They may get disappointed in us. Our dads, every dad is different. A lot of them have this tendency. They know if something is really tense in the moment, they just close their mouths. That does not mean they hate you. It actually means they love you. And they're trying to keep themselves under control. They're trying to handle things the right way. And we do things that most people would throw us away for. But Dad doesn't. And there's a sense of stability that comes along with that should not be taken for granted. That I know what at the end of the day, my dad loves me. It's going to be okay. Then it's We're grateful for the protection they provide. The prayer here, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Asking and seeking God's provision and His protection as we walk throughout the day. And that's what fathers want. I can tell you, what dads want most is for their kids to be okay. That's what they want. And if it means that we are not okay, we'll trade it every time if it makes you okay. And we will gladly do it. Listen, depending upon every household makeup is different. One parent is usually more disciplinarian than the other. That varies depending upon the makeup of your household. Many times it is dad, and many times dad is going to give rules that don't make any sense to us. You can be frustrated that your dad won't let you do what you want to do. But please hear me on this, especially kids. Your dad is not making a rule because he doesn't want you to be happy. I promise you that. When he makes that rule and he has to enforce that rule and you get really upset about it, I can promise you something you're not going to see. You're not going to see the burden he's carrying in the back of his head the rest of the day thinking about that. Did I make the right call? Was I too hard? Was I not hard enough? Is that what I should? Maybe I should just let him be free. They are a good kid. Maybe it will be okay. But when you become a parent, you just do whatever it takes to keep your kids safe. And dads have a protective instinct. And when we have this tendency to be controlling, it's not because we want to be controlling or we think you're dumb or you can't run your life. It's the thought of anything happening to you that drives us crazy. That we can't control, that we can't get in there and fix. That's what scares us most. So when we look at our dads and we can see these things that are prevalent around us, in small ways that many times we don't even recognize, our dads are showing us God. Because those are his natural instincts. He's reflecting the things of God. And this morning, even though all of us as fathers are absolutely imperfect, we all have a Father who is perfect, who is more understanding, more patient, more forgiving, more embracing than we could ever be, and he's ready to forgive. He created us. He's our Father through creation, but he also has to be our Father through redemption. He wants to adopt us into the redeemed family. And if a person is willing to come to him with a penitent faith, confessing Christ, to be baptized in water for the forgiveness of their sins, they're born again into this new family with a Father who doesn't make mistakes. And we're able to serve him and live with him. Or maybe we're struggling with something else, with sin or with life. If we can help each other, we want to. Let us know as we stand and sing this song.